let's see what I've consulted. It's Roberts 2020 qualitative interview questions, guidance for novice researchers and the interview report. No, I think this is wrong. I'm going to change it. I think the one that is correct is SAIST 2022 Introduction to Qualitative Research Methods. That number one, no, it's not correct. But this one, Gudumogula, is correct. I've just included him now. And I've got some examples that I've stolen from some of the projects that I've done so that we can have a moment of reflecting on them. We can make a comparative analysis if they make sense or not. And then we can make specific recommendations. But the workshop focus is on defining focus groups, the size of focus groups, the number of focus groups, participants to the focus group sessions, advanced preparation, moderator of the focus group. And this is, as I've said, as far as we can go, because there's still a lot and we cannot go. They go, I said, the slides up to 82. So we will not be able to do the importance of focus group in qualitative research, the benefits of focus group in qualitative research, limitations of focus groups, participants to the focus group sessions. And we won't deal with when we should use the focus groups. Let's just look at what the focus group are defined as. The focus groups are an extended way of the interview method, a more specific in-depth group interview with discussion. In a structured and organized way, with the help of a facilitator or a moderator, the selected topics are explored. A focus group is a group interview on a particular topic. It's led by a trained moderator. The goal of the focus group is to provide useful insight on the topic. This is one of the data collection methods, focus group interviews. Very different from the face-to-face interviews where there are two people engaging. Here, you've got a group of people that are there that are providing information. In other words, sometimes information consolidated. So the voices are many are captured in one. And I think later on we would understand that thinking about one focus group as something that can present efficient way of collecting data. It has been argued that if you think because you have got too many people in a focus group, then you don't need more than one focus groups. That has been discouraged. I'm saying it just to indicate that there is a difference between us having one-on-one or face-to-face interview and focus group interviews where you've got a group of people. In a way, one would think that people will consolidate their thinking and give you a consolidated response. But you must remember that the dynamics of focus group interviews are different. There are places where, or instances where, some people are dominant, where others, the introvert ones do not speak. Then you find that the views that are mainly articulated or that come out do not represent a group, but do represent skewed towards one individual. You will see what it means for a moderator or for a person who facilitates. This is why we are told here that the facilitation or the process is actually led or run by a trained moderator. Later on, I would argue that there are people who are good at doing it, particularly people with skills, facilitators, people that work with with people, with the society, with the community, people that facilitate human-related processes might have mastered or might have some kind of skills that would be very good and relevant to the facilitation of focus group interviews. So those people would be very good, would do very well in collecting data through the use of focus group interviews. This is opposed to people who never have facilitated group sessions and people who do not work with societies or with communities. They would have problems. And I believe the need for a trained facilitator or moderator might do well with those. Colleagues, focus groups are a particular and special form of interviewing in which the interview asks focused questions of a group of persons, optimally between 5 and 8. This group can be close friends, family members, or complete strangers. They can have a lot in common or nothing in common. Unlike one-on-one interviews, which can probe deeply, focus group questions are narrowly tailored. Please underline the statement narrowly tailored. I want you to engage on this one. To a particular topic and issue, and with notable exceptions, operate the shallow end of inquiry. And this is by this guy referred to as Gudumogula. So we hear that they have got a narrowly tailored. The questions are narrowly tailored as opposed to what happens on face-to-face interviews where the probes are deeply. And I don't know if I should agree with this author. Because when something is not clear, I've experienced that even in focus groups, you can make follow-ups and you can make probe so that you can get the depth of what you want to understand. And I think this should be enriching, particularly when you know that there would be a lot of people in one group or in one venue with a diversity of views. So gathering those views, if you are a good facilitator, you can gather rich data because you can make sure that those diverse views come up on the surface and they are captured during the interviews. And I think that is enriching. I don't know if I do agree with this author. Because focus groups are often used for commercial purposes, they sometimes have a bit of a stigma among researchers. I don't know what they mean here. This is unfortunate as the focus group is a helpful addition to the qualitative researchers toolkit. Focus groups explicitly use group interaction to assist in the data collection. They are particularly useful as supplements to one-on-one interviews or in data triangulation. They are sometimes used to initiate areas of inquiry for later data collection. I will show you in the next slide how I've used the focus groups in combination with other data collection methods. Now, I think the stigma that was referred to here by the author is that maybe some researchers in qualitative research might not like them because they think that they are meant mainly for commercial purposes. I've used them and found them useful, and they're very economic in terms of the cost associated with data collection. Here, I just want to present this slide to demonstrate that focus group interviews can be used in collaboration with other data collection methods. This is the reason why under these data collection techniques, it is indicated that typical qualitative data collecting techniques are interviews, focus group discussions, observations, and the analysis of legislation, policies, and official documents. In this study, focus groups, observations, and analysis of legislation were used as data collection techniques. And earlier on, I thought that I was going to use focus groups only, but later on in this study, the study leader actually recommended that I also conduct in-depth interviews. And this is why I ended up at actually mixing focus groups with one-on-one or in-depth interviews. So the data was very good. And the findings from the focus group interviews and those from in-depth interviews one-on-one complemented each other. The participants of the focus group shall be selected individuals which are experienced or knowledgeable about the specific matter and which can contribute to the information on the intended topic in order to get the required data. The pre-planning and design of the discussion, as well as its environment, play an important role in conducting focus group sessions. Focus groups are carefully planned series of discussions designed to obtain perceptions on a defined area of interest in a permissive, non-threatening environment. So the key word that I want us to, key statement that I want us to take into account is that you need to select individuals who would understand or who have got experience about the matter under discussion. In other words, the research topic or the focus of the study, you would have to select people taking that into account, that they must be able to give me information relevant to what I am studying. Therefore, in other words, they recommend that you use purposive sampling design when you actually select the people. You purposefully use your own judgment to identify those who you think would provide the correct information. These are the people who you must think they know something about what you are investigating. Now, what about the venues? The venues for the focus group sessions should be accessible and convenient to all participants, and it should be decided beforehand. Selecting the venue in a central place would be optimal for all the participants to reach it on time without much difficulty in finding it. There should not be any noise or noise in or around the venue place. A spacious room with enough light and ventilation should be selected to conduct this. Now, I indicate in red that when I conducted interviews, when I used focus group interviews to collect data, it was for that CMA study on organizational design. And due to the fact that mine was a backyard study, in that I was studying people with who I was working, and I was studying the organization for which I was working. Then the venue was very simple because it is just a hall that is there that we used to use when we had our normal meetings. So it was not a difficult thing. This is opposed to where if I had to go to a different setting away from where I was employed, where I would have to look for another venue, and there I had to verify to make sure that it is accessible and that it is a good venue where people would be comfortable. Here they make reference to the fact that there should be enough light and ventilation so that there is no disturbance and people are actually comfortable. A semicircular or circular seating would be ideal as it follows everyone to see. As it allows everyone to see, to listen to, and to engage with one another during the discussions. This is very important. All the participants should be informed about the date, the time, venue of the focus session in advance once it is confirmed so that everyone can plan it accordingly. Refreshments can be arranged as well, depending on the time and duration of the focus group session. And here I have got an extract. I took some information from the study that I conducted. And I'm going to read for you here. But let me first look at the comments that I have in red. This type of venue was very good for a study on ecotourism at Lake Funduzi. And you would see that the venue here is mainly for a different setting as opposed to the setting where I said I was working, and that is where the venue, the hall, the meeting venue was the available hall that we used to use when we had meetings. But here it was different because I think in the outdoor, you don't have sometimes you wouldn't have a room and you would not have a shelter. And let me see what has happened. Although focus group, this is one of the comments, although focus groups are similar to research teams, the setting was different. Outdoor and natural settings are more suitable for ecotourism study. And this is the reason why here, from the text that I've taken from the study, it is stated that, for an example, when meetings took place at the Chief's Scroll, participants gathered under a tree, as in the case with tribal councils. And earlier on, I just said that the author thinks that there should be lights and there should be a round table and that there should be ventilation. Here, automatically, there is ventilation because it is outdoors. But you don't have those comfortable chairs on which you will sit, and you don't have a comfortable table around which you could arrange sittings, the seats for the people to sit around. So here, my thinking is, every setting would have a different plan on how people should be seated. But here, the reason why I presented this slide here is to actually show that there is a consideration on how people should be seated. The venue is an important aspect because this slide speaks to the venue, but here it is talking about the venue which is in the outdoor. But the reason why I bring it here is because there is a discussion about the venue, and that the venue that is being spoken about here was also for a group of people, because in this ecotourism study at the catchment of Lake Funduze, research teams were used. And if you look at literature, research teams are more or less the focus group. They mimic the focus groups. And later on, particularly on Thursday, when we deal with participatory action research, you will see that there are some cases where when people are seated, the sitting can also be conducive, can also mimic the sitting that has been described in terms of the focus groups, which would be indoors. And this would be at a different stage of data collection, because there I would have triangulated to indicate how data was collected. So the sitting arrangements would be different if people are indoors the day or if people are actually in the field. That should not confuse anybody. Now, I write indoor settings are more suitable for a public administration study because the study for the organizational design relates or belong to public administration. It was meant for the completion of the study on public administration. It was partial fulfillment, whereas the other one was a full study on adventure tourism at the catchment of Lake Funduze. So here I'm just indicating that the context is different, but although the context is different, but the sitting arrangements and the groups, the sitting arrangements is an important consideration. The groups was cross-cutting in the examples and with respect to the focus group interviews that we're focusing on today. Let me look at the sizes of the groups before I can pause here. Now, there are different suggestions and references from different authors regarding the number and size of the focus groups. There were mixed opinions on the ideal size of the focus groups according to researchers. Some suggest that there are no general rules as to the optimal number of the focus group discussions, but tests suggest no more than 8. And there I indicate that I've used the minimum of 6 and the maximum of 12 participants in the focus group interviews that I had for the study on organizational design. You probably want at least 4 persons to capture group interactions. Fewer than 4 participants can also make it more difficult for participants to remain anonymous. So in other words, if people are too few, then everybody would be known. And in ethically, there's a recommendation that people should remain anonymous in terms of providing the report. But these things should be depend on the initiative and on the understanding of the researcher himself. Because sometimes even when you know people, it does not appear to be a problem. You would see that on Thursday when we deal with participatory external research, I even listed the names of all the participants. So whether these numbers is known or not known to me, it's not a problem. Therefore, a small number in the focus group, which they say might mean that people would not be anonymous. To me, it's not a problem, because whether they are anonymous or not anonymous, to me, when I use their names positively, then it does not infringe with their rights to remain anonymous, and it is not. It is for their good. You would remember there is sometimes where we were saying, we can acknowledge the involvement and the participation of the participants by actually acknowledging them by name at the acknowledgement section when we actually document the research report, or in any other section of the report. So this is immaterial to me. There are exceptions to these recommendations. Actually, they agree with me. You might want to conduct a focus group with a naturally occurring group, as in the case of a family of 3, a social club of 10, or a program of 15. Now here, they are just telling us that you can collect data from a natural group that is there, which you don't have to establish. It is already established. You can just use it as part of your focus groups. And I indicate here the Department of Water and Sanitation groups, which I did use for the study on organizational designs focus groups, were a selection of people from the Proto-CMA and main accounts. And they were all too large. So here they were not focused because I just selected from one of the from various sections. This is opposed to where if I had to find a small section, I could go and zoom and focus on it. Then it would be a natural occurring focus group from where I could be able to collect data without adding people or without actually removing some of the people that there. But the Netherlands CEO group was naturally occurring, but it had very few people that attended. I will show you later on that this group was included, and it constituted one of the focus groups. I had 3 focus groups. You will see it. And now with the Netherlands one could even think that it was a naturally occurring focus group. This is a group of chief executive officers from who I collected data. And there is an exception. The last name there, Rob Vin, he was not a project manager. Sorry, he was not a chief executive officer. He came from the Domel Water Authority. There you can see Water Authority Domel, but all the others were CEOs. Here I just want to demonstrate that if Water Authority Domel had also forwarded a chief executive officer, this group would have been a group of CEOs. And by the way, when I went to collect data from them, my agreement with the coordinator was that he will bring together the CEOs of the water authorities in the Netherlands. And the one reason why we see Mr. Rob van Veen here is that he was part and parcel of the group that I was working with, and that he then was part and parcel of the coordinating team amongst the people that assisted me to assemble this group so that these interviews can take place. It was him and one of the CEOs, Hein van Stockholm, because we had a project together. So we arranged that because the project is related to the catchment management agencies that I'm focusing on. So I requested that, and actually some of them even thought that if I go and collect data from the Netherlands, then the insight on the operation of these institutions would also be good, because I would get the contribution from the Dutch authorities. So, but the example here is that there was it nearly constituted a naturally created focus group. Now, when the persons know one another, this is another challenge which they are still arguing. The problems of too few for anonymity don't apply, and although 10 to 15 can be unwildly to manage, there are strategies to make this possible. They're just showing you that there is indeed a difference between a larger group and a smaller group, and too small a group is not actually needed. That is why there is a debate on how large the group is, whether it should be too small or it should be too large. But they, I have from an earlier slide, I indicated from 6 maybe to 12 individuals. This is the reason why here they think that if they go up to 15, then maybe the group becomes too large, and they perceive that maybe even the facilitation, you can have some problems. But there are people who are saying strategies are there that can be used to facilitate. You will remember one day, I think it was last month, when we had more than 1,000 participants in this workshop, that we had people from Ghana, we had people from Zimbabwe, we had people from Congo, all of them, all over South Africa and all over Africa were participating. And you could see that the questions were too many, but we had to cut them. And that is one of the strategies that we did to ensure that the group becomes manageable. So the strategy of the facilitator, maybe the trained or the experienced facilitator, is very, very important in ensuring the efficiency, and that data should be collected accordingly. If you really are interested in these groups, its dynamics, not just a set of random strangers dynamic, then you will want to include all its members, or as many as are willing and able to participate. Maybe they are referring to if you've got a natural occurring group. So it should not be too large, but it should not be too little. But when it is too large, it is actually a challenge to manage. But if you limit some of the members, you must remember that you also actually removing the cream, some of the information and the insights that should contribute to the dynamics of this focus group. Also note that, so that when you engage and when I pause, we can make reference and discuss how your experiences are. Some people expect that conducting focus groups is an efficient form of data collection. After all, you get to hear from 8 people instead of just 1 in the same amount of time. But this is a serious misunderstanding. As I said when I started, what you hear in a focus group is one single group interview or discussion. It is not the same thing at all as conducting 8 single 1-hour interviews. Each focus group counts as one. Yes, I do agree, but the difference between a face-to-face and one-on-one with these focus groups is that one-on-one, you've got one person and you've got a view of one person. And in a larger group, you've got many people speaking. They can disagree. That disagreement actually is a good thing for you to analyze data and is building into your data. They agree, they disagree. If you are recording, by the way, the good thing is your tape recorder, your recording device will even capture where they've got disagreement and where they do agree. It will even capture and show you if it is one man who is dominant, or if other people are keeping quiet, or if people are speaking. So it provides you with a very good opportunity of analyzing data and making a determination if there is bias. So although there's an argument by this author that one focus group should count as one. Yes, it counts as one focus group, but it does not count as one person, because there are many voices and many views. And I want you to engage me on this one. We can debate. And this is the reason why in these workshops, I'm interested in hearing you and these workshops are enriched by your diverse views. Because if I were talking to one of you only, then I only understand the one side of the story. But because you are so many, then you enrich the discussions. And that is where I also benefit. Most likely, you will need to conduct several focus groups, and you can design these as comparisons to one another. It's highly recommended that when employing focus groups, you plan on composing more than one and at least three focus groups is a recommendation. This allows you to take note of and potentially discount findings from a group with idiosyncratic dynamics, such as where a particular dominant personality silences all other voices. In other words, putting all your eggs in a single focus group basket is not a good idea. Now, I do tell you that a good facilitator would not allow one person to dominate. And if there is one person that is dominating, a good facilitator should be able to control that. And those people that are keeping quiet, that are introverts, we also want to hear them. And there should be good strategies to make them, to stimulate their discussions so that they can also speak out and not one person is dominant. Now, I just stopped where another guy, where I was going to look at the views of how Gudumogula sees it. And here we want to talk about the number of focus groups. Maybe I've missed another slide here, but I want to pause here and give you an opportunity to talk. We have presented a number of concepts and some views. I want to, and some I even indicated to you that when we pause, some of them you need to underline so that we can engage on those. And let me give you an opportunity to make some contributions.
Yeah, I just want to check if, for instance, you are doing a policy analysis, will a focus group be ideal for the type of research? Thank you.
Can focus groups be good for policy analysis? People who have got experience in the use of focus groups and people who have got experience in doing policy analysis studies. Any contribution in the way that you think, even if you have not done it, how do you see it? What do you think?
I just want to share my mind on this. Looking at the fact that policies on paper can be interpreted or misinterpreted in a different way, I think focus group can work very well on policy maybe making and policy viewing or analysis. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Jarusile. I also think I have seen, remember the process of developing policy. There is a process called agenda setting and a process where the draft policy is taken for consultation. And that is where focus groups are actually used. And I've been part and parcel of the team that has been developing policies for the Department of Water and Sanitation in the past. We did not only have one focus group. We did not only have one workshop. We had several groups. We used to work in various regions, 9 regions under the department. Then it means you go to all regions to meet stakeholders that can give input on that one. And in that way, your regions and your stakeholders mimic focus groups. That is where they interact with you. From there, you can pull all the inputs, go and revise the policy, and then distribute it again back to them. And you can again consult. It depends on you how many times you want to consult. So I think it is a good idea to use focus groups for policy studies. That is how I see it. And how many focus groups should we have? The focus group numbers do not have to be too many, as you have a number of individuals in one gathering. Now, this statement actually answers the earlier debate on us not seeing one focus group as an answer to everything. Now, we can have few, not too many. But again, they are considering that this is mainly because one focus group has got a number of individuals in there. They've got different views, they've got different inputs, and then they influence the outcomes of the study. So we are advised not to have too many. Some argue that you can have 4 focus groups, but that consideration of response saturation should be made after the third focus group discussion. Then it is another person who is thinking that after the third focus group, you might find that new information that is coming in starts to deteriorate. So saturation appears to have been reached. This is the experience that the author did have. And if you have a different experience, please do share with us. But I have used only 3 focus groups here and found that they worked very well. And in terms of the research teams, there were only 4. And for me, they did wonderful work. You will be able to experience this on Thursday when we focus on PAR. I have used 3 focus groups for completion of a research report for the Master of Public Administration. In that, because those groups were the Netherlands CEOs have said something about that. The other group was the Limpopo Provincial Office of the Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as the Gauteng Provincial Office of the Department of Water and Sanitation. So there were 3. So my numbers were accepted, and the research report was passed. Now here is the example. Establishment of the focus groups. In this study, 3 focus groups were established representing the Netherlands government, the Gauteng Provincial Administration, and the Limpopo Provincial Offices of the Department of Water and Sanitation. This number of focus groups and participants were ideal for this study, and there was no reason to use more focus groups and participants because information presented by these groups and these participants yielded rich information. And look at my comments. I alerted you that not 3 focus groups were established, but above all, I justified why there were only 3 focus groups. And you would remember that every time I make recommendations when I speak to you, that if you make a specific choice of following or using a specific approach or a research method, please justify that, why you have chosen that. Here, then I was demonstrating, the author was justifying why he or she chose only 3 focus groups for the collection of data. And the other thing that is noticeable from this statement is that there is no citation of an author that supports the use of 3 focus group or fewer groups. And this is the reason why I made another comment that this justification should have been supported by literature. And always I say, when you make a choice, justify your choices by indicating that a specific author or specific reference actually support the decision that you have made. So nobody is going to shoot you, nobody is going to discredit you. You will see that you will navigate very well, because this is part and parcel of defending the choices that you have made. And what I did is that even when I started to discuss those focus groups, even before them, there was a listing of those focus groups. This appeared in chapter 4, where I presented the findings, I presented the results of the study, and it is written like this. The 3 focus groups that were established are the Netherlands Water Authority's CEO team, the Gauteng Provincial Top Management Team of the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the Limpopo Provincial Top Management Team of the Department of Water and Sanitation. So I've listed them to show that this is the number that I'm going to use. So I emphasized and confirmed that only 3 would be used. That is in terms of the numbers and how many. Now, let's look at the participants to the focus group sessions. When forming a focus group, there are two different strategies for inclusion. The first strategy is that you need to consider diversity. In other words, diversity focus groups include people with diverse perspectives and experiences. That is the first strategy. We will see the second one, which is different from this one. Establishing a diversity focus group helps the researcher to identify commonalities across this diversity and or note interactions across differences. Earlier on, we spoke about the choice of people to participate in the focus groups, that they should be the people that have got knowledge. So although they do have knowledge, it is also acknowledged that they might come from different background, or their knowledge might be from a different perspective. So it means they will respond from their different perspectives. And here it is said that this one would help us to identify commonalities across this diversity, or we can note the interactions or even the differences in the manner in which people understand the research topic. People will therefore contribute their different views, which actually enriches and ensure that you collect quality data. And I have, on several occasions, while I was collecting data, have made sure that I actually include people from diverse backgrounds, so that you don't only research people from one who would give you one perspective, just because you think that vendor culture should actually contribute positively to nature conservation. Then you only go to those people who can give you that one. Even the people that can give you the antithesis, the contradictions are actually allowed. That is what would enrich your data. What kind of diversity to capture depends on the research question, but care should be taken to ensure that those participating are not set up for attack from other participants. This is why many warn against diversity focus groups, especially around politically sensitive topics. So when I used focus groups, it was when I was collecting data for the study on organizational design, the catchment management agencies. Here, although I did use I composed focus groups from the Department of Water and Sanitation. These were in different provinces. And although one group was in one province and one in one province, inside each of those groups, you had different sections. Those sections undertake the water sector responsibilities from a different perspective. And their understanding of organizational design and their understanding of the CMAs, which was the research topic, was very different. So they came from different perspectives. They enriched, and we are also again warned here that we should not bring people that would fight amongst themselves, because it will even defeat the purpose of the study. But the good thing is that if people came from the same organization, they all would have something to say, although from different perspectives. But over and above, the use of the Netherlands CEO focus group, then you can see that the people have got different perspectives, because the Netherlands have got 300 years of experience working with water authorities. And we in South Africa have not yet even established the number that we anticipate we wanted to establish. We wanted to establish more than 10, I think it was 16 all in all. Later on, we changed. It came to 9, and we are at 9 now. We have not even been able to establish the 9, and there is now a talk of establishing 6, lesser and lesser. So our experience in South Africa is different. Therefore, we are saying the experience that the Department of Water and Sanitation had, say for instance, from the 2 provincial offices where the focus groups were composed, would have a different view and different experience than the Netherlands. although the two provinces would on their own have different views, and although each province would have different sections who were represented in the focus group, having different views and perspectives on the CMAs and organizational design. So that is how diversity would have. And so the impact of this means that the data would be rich, and you would not only collect one understanding, you would collect it from a different point of view. Now you can see that from the Gauteng Provincial Office, you had people with different roles. This is just to indicate that the different roles: administration of water use authorization, integrated water source management, the first participant, the second participant, regional infrastructure development, a different focus than the first participant, refurbishment and rehabilitation, and the third one, promote intergovernmental relations, also different focus, and the fourth participant, integrated water resource management. So you can see that there is a diversity of in terms of the makeup of the focus group in Gauteng, and this is an account on how it was established. And these discussions are very, very important. All of them were included in the research report so that the readers can see, in terms of the methodology, how the research participants were included, how they were selected, and the rationale behind there, and the specific strategies, as we're discussing now, the first strategy of diversity. So even the breakdown like this in this slide, actually it's important to show that people were different. Now, this is where I've even included their names, because it is for a good cause. Sometimes when they read the research report, they would see that we've acknowledged them, that they've made a positive contribution to the outcomes of the study. Now, the other strategy, the second one, that was the diversity one. The second one is to build a convergent focus group, which includes people with similar perspectives and experiences. That is strategy number 2. These are particularly helpful for identifying shared patterns and group consensus. The important thing is to closely consider who will be invited to participate and what the composition of the group will be in advance. And I've already spoken about the group makeup in the Netherlands, that it was of a group of CEOs. And in some cases, you might find that this group might even had its forum where it meets. And this is the reason why it was so simple for me to have them meet together, that I can meet them together in one room. So it was a simple one to coordinate. So they share commonality, there is consensus, they've got specific governed by the legislation and the policies in water resource management, in the water sector in the Netherlands. They have got the same role and responsibilities. So although, because they belong to different institutions, they've got a diverse view, but there is convergence as a group on how these institutions should be run. And I can tell you that the very first, participant here, Hein van Stockholm, I partnered with him because I acted as one of the acting CEOs of the CMAs. So I partnered with him, and we shared ideas. So I saw that we had convergent views. And what more about his friends and his colleagues with who they coordinate their own activities in the Netherlands. It means they had a convergence, some consensus on some aspects of running these organizations. Selecting participants' colleagues for focus groups is a very important and crucial task in order to make it representative sample. Therefore, the demographic factors should be considered. The formation of groups can be done by discriminating different factors such as gender, age, experience, and different categories related to the intended selective topic. For an example, 2 sessions with female participants, 2 sessions with male participants, and 2 mixed sessions. Now, I make an argument. This is my own views. It's not the views of the author. I say the Netherlands group was composed of white males only. So demographically, it was not represented. It did not have females. This group, again, had participants of different ages, experience, and background. So, it was only gender that was missing. So because age, experience, and background was actually considered. The South African teams had females and males, young and the old, but racially they did not have white people. They did not have coloreds. So, but this is mainly because you might find that these groups might also have not been there in those offices, or they were in the minority in that they were not part and parcel of those people that could provide valuable information about the topic under investigation, the catchment management agencies, and organizational design. So as a result, they were left out. That should be considered. But the issue of demographics has been stressed to be important, that it should be considered. And what I've done is to show you how that we did consider geographic representation. This is the reason why we had 3 focus groups. We had one in Limpopo, the other one was in Gauteng, and the other one was in the Netherlands. So we considered variety. And this is just a deeper breakdown of the composition of all the different groups. And I've presented the slides that showed this to you, but this is just a visual presentation in this, is it a diagram or in this figure? You could see that the Gauteng have use abbreviations to show you who was represented there. And in the Netherlands, I've just used the names of the institutions that they represent. But in the Limpopo, I said the same. It is the same makeup or composition as it was in the Gauteng province. So this is to show you that actually the approach did consider that diversity is an important aspect to consider participants. All the focus groups should follow the same set of conditions in terms of organization so that it will be reliable to compare the groups. However, it is important to find participants that have knowledge about and interest in the selected topic and who are able to contribute substantially to the discussions. Each participant should have something to say on the topic. It is also advisable that the participants generally feels comfortable in speaking with the others. So high attention should be paid on selecting the focus group participants in order to avoid the possibility of biases. And as it is said, the same set of conditions should be considered in the organization. This is the reason why we said they make up the group composition in terms of the South African focus groups, the Limpopo office and the Gauteng offices. We actually made sure that the respective participants come from those sections. The sections in the Limpopo were also the sections in the Gauteng, and then when we went to the Netherlands, it was different because the strategy was the one that sought convergence as opposed to the one that sought diversity. In South Africa, we sought diversity, we achieved that, but in the Netherlands, we sought convergence and we achieved that. And that is what has enriched the outcomes and the results of the study. And the diversity can be seen there. We made sure that these people have got different background. We've already presented that one. We cannot go back to it because we have spoken about it. It will take our time. But I want us to look at the preparations that should be there before we could start facilitating these focus groups. Now, it is said that once you have selected your focus groups and set a date and time, there are few things you will want there are things that you should plan out before the meeting. Now, as with interviews, you begin by creating an interview guide. We've spoken about this, where a good one-on-one interview guide should include 10 to 12 main topics with possible prompts and follow-ups. The focus group guide should be more narrowly tailored to a single focus or topic area. I don't know if I do agree with this. For example, a focus might be on the organizational design for the CMAs, but how do you only talk about one thing? You need a number and multiple questions that will support the topic. In other words, although we are talking about the organizational design for the CMAs, we need to ask more questions that people should respond. Let's see if this is made clear in the next slides. A series of possible questions, it is clarified. A series of possible questions would be drafted that would help prod participants to think about and discuss organizational design. So although we are saying that our topic is organizational design, then we ask a number of questions. It's the same thing as when we go to the interviews there, because there we do introduce the topic and the focus of the study. And there, our interview guide has got those number of questions that we debated about when we spoke about the interview guide. These questions or discussions, the prompt can be creative and may include stimulus materials or posing hypotheses. Avoid embarrassing questions. Also, it is important to avoid pushing people to divulge personal information. Here we do agree in terms of the ethics. Chances are some participants will begin talking themselves without you directly asking them to do so, but allowing important I just don't see what has been written there. But here we don't have to push people. We've agreed to divulge personal information because we want people to remain anonymous, and that we want people to discuss about common aspects about the topic. People can just introduce themselves, but further than that, we want them to focus on what we have here. And you will see later on how I've taken some examples on how you start introducing the topic and how you probe people, how you encourage people to talk about what is the part of the focus and how they can also introduce themselves. It is allowed and it has been implemented and practiced in some projects. The group itself will determine how deep and how personal it wants to go. This is not the time or place to push anyone out or on their comfort zone. It means we have to discuss about a common factor, which is the study topic, but not in relation to a specific individual, but in relation to what we all see as a view. This is just an example of an interview guide, and I don't want us to talk more about it because we've already spoken about an interview guide. The only thing is to indicate that even for the study on organizational design, an interview guide was prepared. So they still make a reference to it in that focus group interviews are part and qualitative type of studies, and therefore you use an interview guide. You don't need a lot of close-ended questions. They say in your advanced preparations, you should have copies of consent forms and supplement questionnaires you are using prepared in advance. With my study, I was studying people with who I was working, and I was studying the organization for which I was employed. Therefore, asking for consent and some supplementary consent was only actually permission to conduct study was obtained from the head of the department and the office manager or administrator. So consent was already there and was provided. So the people agreed to come to focus group interviews, and then we had to continue. And by the way, the study on organizational design was seen to be contributing to the objectives of the department. And this is the reason why it was funded and was supported by the employer. So the employer felt that by participating, the the employees or my co-workers were actually contributing to the objectives of the department. Ask a friend or colleague to assist you on the day-to-day of the focus group. I did not do this. I was alone facilitating the focus groups. They can be responsible for making sure that the recording equipment is functioning and may even take some notes on body language while you are moderating the discussion. And this, I think, I missed the body language, and unless if I had remembered while I was actually reconciling the notes, because I was using 2 cell phones to record here. They were my recording devices, so they could not even record the body language, because this is a gap that I realize now, that by me not having someone to assist, then I missed elements of data collection, observation. Then they also recommend that we need to order food here, or coffee or snacks for the groups, and it was not done in terms of the focus groups that I had. This is important. Having refreshments will be appreciated by your participants and really damps down their anxiety level. You can also, as part of the preparation, bring name tags and pens. Find a quite welcoming space to convene that we've already spoken about. Often this is a classroom where you move chairs in a circle, but public libraries often have meetings rooms that are ideal places for community members to meet. That is if you are in another area, in another setting. But in my case, because it was at the workplace and where the meeting facilities were available, then we just used, it was convenient, then we just used what was available there. Be sure that the space allows for food. In my case, then there was no need for these tags, name tags, because participants knew each other as well as the moderator or the researcher. The venue was within the premises, as this was a backyard research, which shows that there is an advantage of conducting research from within the organization. And this is an example of what happens in terms of people that either have to introduce themselves or they don't have to introduce. And this is an example from the catchment of Lake Funduzi. And it was no longer on organizational design, it was on ecotourism, sustainable tourism development. And it reads like this: recognizing that research teams' processes determine the success of the gathering, of data gathering efforts, participants were carefully facilitated in a manner that would be acceptable to all of them. One aspect that simplified these processes was the relationship that participants had with one another. Now they knew each other. Now this is the reason I'm actually showing you the reason why in some instances you would not need name tags. They knew each other and they came from the same community. And earlier interaction that some of them had with the researcher also helped in this regard. So the researcher knew some of the participants here who were part and parcel of these research teams. Now, look at my comments are that participants knew each other. The researcher had conducted research projects before a catchment of Lake Funduzi. And this is the reason why sometimes name tags cannot be required. It might be that the moderator does not know everyone, or he knows some of the people, or he might have even forgotten the name. So in that cases, when the tags are used, then it's for the purposes of the researcher or the moderator, instead of for the sake of the participants themselves. Now here, the good thing is that they knew themselves, they came from the same place. Let me also pause so that before we can go to an interesting part that I said would be the one that I'm interested to see and on which we can engage a lot, because it talks about the behavior of the moderator, who is the researcher herself or himself. But first of all, a pause and an opportunity for us to make comments and ask questions. I'm doing social behavioral studies. I'm of the opinion that I cannot conduct my interview utilizing focus groups due to the confidentiality issues based on my research. I can only convene a focus group if the people are known to each other. Please advise. All right, colleagues, I'm going to make this advice while I wait for you to raise hands. I have said that in some cases, it was at the catchment of Lake Funduzi. People came from the same village and they knew each other. So it means this commentator, actually Lucia, is saying that that could be the only ideal situation if people know each other, because this commentator says that there is some confidentiality in terms of the research. Maybe we can ask this commentator to indicate the type of confidentiality that is there, so all of us can understand why there is a thinking that only focus groups can only be used if people know each other. Can you indicate what type of confidentiality it is? But anybody else who wants to make comment on this, you can make comment if you think you fall in the same situation or you think you can make the same recommendation.
I'm not sure whether I can come in, Doc.
Please do so.
I already said something in the chat. I just assumed that whatever confidentiality, if confidentiality, it's about that you can't have, for instance, a focus group based on your research topic. So I then said, I think focus group is just but one of the methods that you may decide on based on the nature of the research. In some cases, one-on-one may be the best approach, and in another, the FG could be the way to go. So I was basing that now, obviously, because there is a particular information that is missing. Whether, for instance, if you were to interview, let's say, the rapist, so you may not necessarily conduct a focus group. But then if you were to interview, for instance, people that have experience, women who have experience in marriage, you may, depending on what you want to gather from that, that's a particular scenario. So I basically made the assumption based on just one point of saying that in this particular case, I have a situation that my research is focusing on confidentiality that is close to secrecy, but is confidential. Yes. So that's why I said, basically, then it will depend. You may not need to have a group interview, yes, but you may need to have a one-on-one. Thanks, Doc.
A very wonderful. This is a wonderful example. And now you remind me that in some instances, when we spoke about snowball type of sampling, we said that if you are dealing with drug dealers, they might be a gang or a group, or a gang of rapists. They might be a group. And when you have interviewed one, then you can ask him, where can I get another fraud? Where can I get another robber? Or where can I get another rapist? Then they can refer to you. But then you have, in terms of your ethics, to agree that all of them are going to be anonymous. So you cannot bring them together, maybe for that reason, in that what they tell you is confidential and they should not be revealed and they should remain anonymous. Your example is beautiful. Thank you very much for making that valuable contribution. There was AM who asked the question here. AM says, are the focus groups counted in parallel with different group members or serial cumulatively with the... I don't understand the question. Can AM please assist us in indicating what he or she mean by this?
Yes, my question is, do we count the groups in parallel, meaning as if, say we are doing a focus group on a specific, like, let me give an example of that one, of a policy review or policy development.
Yes.
Although there may be processes that one has to go through them, maybe at the early stages of doing maybe assessment within the organization, do we count this in parallel, meaning different people but doing the same thing probably will reach the saturation faster? Or is it about you're always going to count them, for instance, cumulatively, serially, one after the other, but cumulatively?
Okay, so if I may ask, how many focus groups are you having?
The question is based on what Doc was explaining, that some authors mentioned that about 3 is good. Some of them say about 4 is good. So I just wanted to understand the rationale about, or say the parameters that may indicate or advise in the number of groups that you have, as well as does it take into consideration the issue that there could be a parallel work or there could be a serial work, because that was not clear or defined at the beginning.
Okay. Like with my 2 cents worth, in terms of the number of groups, it depends what exactly is your aim. What is it that you want to achieve? So maybe are you maybe a crossover study? You are trying to compare. In most cases, if you be just one focus group, and eventually you do reach a saturation. But if now you've got different groups or different cohorts, it would depend, because in some cases you find that maybe group 1, you are addressing something, let's say employment, and then in the other group you are addressing employment, but maybe having reached a post-grad study. So in a way you are comparing. So it depends on the parameters. I think that's as far as I can go. You have to really tailor it to your your studies, and looking at your research objectives and your research questions as well. Yeah, I think for now let me pack it there. Thank you. Hope I've helped a bit.
Yeah, thanks Nomhle and Doc. Yeah, I think you've actually asked a very important question, Abel, because in my mind, obviously, while agreeing with some of the elements that Nomhle spoke about, in my mind, I'm thinking that if, for instance, one, you were correct to say, depending the policy, it depends on the level of the policy where you are. If you've already done some mileage, you started with the first group, which is Group Nonala. I'm making an example with my name, and the participants are 5 Nonalas or 8 Nonalas in the group. They give you information, you go back, you integrate whatever information that you got from the participants Nonala. Then you come back to the same participants Nonala. It's also with the same question. Chances are you may not get an interesting or vibrant group that like you would have during your first interaction with the same group that is Nonala. And 2, you might find that, like I said, with the energy that you got first time from the group Nonala might not be the same. But if then you are coming back to give feedback to the same group Nonala, just to confirm whether you captured the issues that you met them the first time around, you may get that energy like you did the first time. So for me, I'm looking at it in that particular way. And then on another, I'm saying to myself, if, for instance, I'm doing a particular study, and then I go and meet the same people and ask them the same question, chances are I'm going to lose them in the process. But rather, I may need to have Group A, where I ask them the same question with 12 participants or 5 participants. I get the answers. I go to Group B, which is a different group, participants altogether. I ask them the same questions. They give them their own answers. That is when then I can be able to compare the responses, the answers between the first group, the second group, and the third group. So I guess is that a situation of saying that it depends on what is it that you want to achieve and how much of the information that you want to basically compare between your 3 focus groups or your 4 focus groups that you basically want to interview in whatever way that you want to conduct that conversation. So that is my contribution.
Abel, does it help?
Yes, Doc, it does. Thank you. And it actually helped me to have an understanding of the reasons, as I mentioned, about the numbers and as well as the composition of the group. It helps. Thanks.
Yes, beautiful. The other thing that comes to mind is that we always make reference to recursive nature of the research process. You will note that after you have done the research proposal, okay, let's say at each stage of the research proposal, your understanding grows. When you do the background, that is the initial literature review. Then you do the statement of problem. Then you base it on the initial literature that you have done. The statement of the purpose statement, all of it is based on the previous work, but it is building the research proposal to its finality, to its completion. And from the research proposal stage to doing chapter 2 on literature, then your understanding is also improving. And then after you have done all the planning, when you go to the field, your understanding of the topic, the research topic, and the challenges is actually changing. You then have the first focus group interviews. Your understanding is also growing because now, instead of you having that theoretical background, now you have got the real evidence that is coming from real life, from the people that understand the concept that is under investigation. And when you move from this first group and you go home, you have grown a little bit. When you go to interview the second group, you have got a different approach now. Your skills of facilitation, the way of asking questions, and the understanding of the concepts, because already the first group has made an input on your worldview. Then when you continue from one group to another one, it means there's different understanding, there's growth, and then if you are even making comparison, you would even see, oh, the first group was very good at articulating it from that perspective, but the second one articulates from this. The third one, it's like that. Oh, from 1 to 2 to 3, oh, their saturation is actually attained. It means then the the research questions can better be responded to. And this, yes, Abel, thank you. You can come in.
Doc, my last question. Apology for hogging this one.
Yes.
I wish to understand, when one does the focus group, how does one, for instance, triangulate and minimize contamination of bias or a leading? Because when you facilitate, it may be quite a tricky process to lead it in a certain direction, but minimize contamination and bias. And then the issue of triangulation to basically undo or counter potential bias.
Okay, I think this one even belongs to the section that is coming, but let me try to respond. When I used PAR, PAR mimics focus groups. The only difference that I came across is that PAR entailed even field work, because with the research teams, we had transect walks. And apart from me meeting the research teams once, I might have met them 4 times. Each one of them were met 4 times because I was triangulating through the use of different methods of collecting data. There was participatory mapping you can do with them. There was seed analysis you can do with them. There is transwalks you do with them. There is even planning which we do with them. That already is triangulation. And as a result, it will even actually eliminate the element of bias, because a different data collection methods actually is different. It will give you a different way of collecting data. And if the other one has led to biasness, the other one will then not support it. There would be contradictions. But if it is then correctly implemented and all of them don't have biases, then they would confirm, but they would contradict if there is biasness. But the facilitation strategies that you employ as a facilitator and as a moderator should also be used as strategies to actually eliminate element of bias. You will see, we'll talk about the dominant member who wants to talk alone, and that is part of biasness. When other people keep quiet, then only his views are then captured. It means that is biasness. But when you interject, when you facilitate and control discussions, you make sure that he does not dominate, and not only his views must be heard, other people who are keeping quiet, who have got different views, so that they can actually neutralize biasness, then they must come in, they must be given opportunity. We will see it in the next section. Let me for now read this next chart, and we can move on. Ufi, thanks for the presentation. My question is that, what was the reason for not ordering food during the time you were conducting focus groups? Oh, no, I can respond that we were at work, and at work, each one of us brings food there, and here I did not see the need to order food. But I've got a slide that will show you that when I was at the catchment of Lake Fundus, indeed I ordered food. And I remember some of you did ask me in the previous workshop if I disclosed that. Then what I've done here is to use a snippet to capture that discussion, so that you can see that I took it from a report. So to show that I actually divulged and declared it in the report that I did buy food. So, but in the focus teams, people brought their own meals, and I did not even prepare tea for them. How do we best sample the beneficiaries of a program for a focus group? For an example, I must do 3 focus groups of 6 students, but there was a total of 100 beneficiaries. I don't know. Here we remember. Oh, okay. Let me open for you. Colleagues, how do we best sample beneficiaries? We want 3 groups. In other words, 3 times 6 is 18. Yes, we would only use 18 students from 100 beneficiaries. How do we sample?
Well, I've got a question before looking at the sampling strategy. Why specifically 6? Because then it means you're not factoring in, how can I put it, the formula for how you get to achieve the sample. Because usually with the sample you derive from the population. So either you use the published table or you use a formula. So yeah, one would need to probably look at that based on the reasons why you are being dictated to seek 6.
Vanessa, do you want to clarify? Vanessa, do you want to clarify before?
Yes, good evening. I just wrote 6 as the minimum, but because they say a focus group is about 6 to 8, that's why I had written 6. But it just has to be a small sample compared to the total of 100 people.
Yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to figure out what's the best way to sample from that 100.
And
Okay.
you are, is this qualitative? It's qualitative, it's also focus groups.
Yes, it's focus group qualitative.
Nomhle, there you are.
Yes, so if one has to be using, for example, how can I put this? A published table. So you can either use a published table, and it will give you like a rough estimate. It's just that like now I can't think of the actual formula, and I don't have my notes with me, but there's a specific calculation that you need to factor in so that you can justify in your write-up, because just as an example, saying maybe 6 is a rounded figure, you might how can I put this? You might deny yourself, good points when you are being evaluated. So the best formula, look at there is a formula that one needs to. I'll go through my notes and then I'll just put it in the chat. So there's various ways that one can sample a population, but they say anything above 100, especially for your focus group, it's way too big. So you just need to what is it that you are trying to achieve, and then look at the sampling table. So as the class continues, I'll quickly look at my notes and check and post in the group, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
It's okay. No, this that you're talking about, the table, the sampling table, the published table. I'm not familiar with that. I think I will have to go and do research, because for me, you know what I was going to tell her, because this is qualitative study. I'm not interested on the numbers. I'm interested on the quality, and therefore the choice of 6 people for me is going to I'm going to be judgmental and say who can best respond to these questions. In my case, in the focus groups that I had 2 groups that work in the provincial offices. The one is the main account. These people conduct activities that are funded by the Exchequer main account. But there was the Proto-CMA, and this is the group that is going to join the established institution. And this group were funded by water use charges. So it was a trading entity. There were 2 of them. The only thing that I did is to ensure that I've got representation from the 2 groups, and that I should consider diversity. Females, if there's disability, I have to include. If there are males, I have to include. Then I also have to consider the various responsibilities that these people undertake. And in one of the examples that I had, people had too many responsibilities. And if I had 12 people, then it's either that there are 12 responsibility types of tasks or skills area or whatever. But it is a sort of ensuring that there is representativity, but all of it was based on my judgment. Do they understand the topic? Can they answer it? Then judgmental, I said I would take those that I think would, the 6 or the 3 groups, 6 of each, then all of them should be able to answer. If they cannot respond, then they're out. They're not part of my focus groups. That is what I was going to answer. And the way I composed my groups is exactly the way I'm explaining now. But I didn't use the list like you, but I'm saying I've used purposive sampling.
Yes, no. I hear you, Dr. Korombi. Sorry to interrupt. I've actually managed to get my notes quickly. So what I was actually referring to, it's more on the probability sampling. So yes,
quantitative sampling.
Yes.
Okay.
So my wires got crossed there. But yes, but
but
see
you were
definitely.
not wrong. You were not wrong, Nomhle, because I think me and you were in the same thinking. I also thought what Konja, who is the name of the colleague who raised the question? Because her question sounds like more of a quantitative study. You know, so it has those elements. How do we best sample the beneficiaries of a program? You know, so then when you basically you see that doc. So
Yes.
exactly. So
It was
Themba is
Vanessa.
correct.
Oh yes,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes,
yes,
so-
yes. Hi, Nona, yeah. So if
Well-
we need to then justify, then one can look at using various, like for example, systematic sampling,
Yes.
maybe even stratified, yeah. For something like 100,
Yes.
systematic, it's actually quite interesting because you can say maybe every like you choose a participant based on like every fourth
Yes.
interval. So if you've got now 100 people and then number 4, it's your first participant, number 8,
Number 8.
yes, and then
Number
number
12.
12, yes, or if you're using 5 interval of 5, you start with
Beautiful.
1 and number 6 is your next one, and then number 11, yeah. So that will
That is
yes, because in the
probably-
writing
that is
in
probability, yes.
yes, because sometimes in the writing, like I've seen, you know, with the ethical clearance, you have to justify how did you get to that number. So you
Yes.
have to you know, like a little bit of a write-up to say, okay, out of that, it's convenient sampling. I accessed whoever was available because they are highly they are the subject matter expertise, or in a big group like you know your 100, you said yes, the method of your sampling, you use maybe a systematic sampling and this type of sequencing, just exactly so that you can be able to justify
Yeah,
why you chose that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's correct. And actually, you used a sampling frame. It's a sampling frame. Your list is called a sampling frame. That is where you would choose those people in terms of your sampling strategy, a probability one. Thank you very much. Suzanne, Vanessa, are you happy?
Yes, I'm very happy. Thank you. That's answered perfectly. I'm clear. Thank you.
Also take my comment as an answer. You will choose between quantitative and qualitative sampling strategies, ne?
Yes, I know everything. It's actually cleared my mind. Thank you very much. Both answers, actually. All 3 answers. Yes. No. Very
Okay.
No, doc.
And there is a question by Mpo. There's a question by Mpo Silivalo. Looking at few limitations, bias, and dynamics, will a focus group not lead or guide a discussion about a specific topic, therefore leave out a few important aspects that may have been shared in open questions? There is another question. Can we engage on this one as a group? There is a question now. Looking at few limitations, bias, and dynamics, will a focus group not lead to that?
My research is not on focus groups. However, because it's qualitative, you have to look at all the possibilities and narrow down which approach works for you. So I'm looking at this question about bias. When I read research, bias is inevitable in research because it involves the researcher and participants who are all human. But there are controls that you can use to guard against the bias, not giving the data that the objectives of the research set out to give. I think if the facilitator is well trained on how to run a focus group, they will know what to avoid and also practice self-awareness so that when they do or are on the edge of breaking those boundaries that focus groups require, then they can take it back. I think it's inevitable. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, it is inevitable. And in the section that we would not deal with today is that one of the role of the moderator, and it is his role or her role to ensure that bias is limited. We have said that people can dominate or some other people can keep quiet. When you keep quiet, you only get one view, and the view is not challenged. Then that is biasness, as we have said. And if other people come in, then this needs to happen because the facilitator would say, no, you also speak, or making follow-ups on those things that are doubtful or that appear to be steering us to only one view. So it's a way in which we can also actually manage bias and eliminate biasness. But it will always be there, but you cannot eliminate it 100%, because some people would even tell you things that they think you want when you don't want, when actually you want to be objective. Is this not more like quantitative? Yes, it is quantitative. We have agreed on that one. This is about the role of the moderator. That they say this moderator must set ground rules. And I will just go to examples only. Setting the scene and ground rules. Having identified the need to set ground rules that would assist towards managing group dynamics, two approaches were followed in doing so. One, in the first instance, ground rules were set during special meetings after the establishment of the research teams. And in the second, they were laid down during the first meetings arranged for participatory mapping. So in these meetings, the researcher thanked the research participants for their involvement, presented the research process and the format of the research teams. This presentation included restatement of the research objectives and emphasis on the need for the forum's decision-making and active consultation. Additionally, the researcher reminded the team of the value of participants' contribution and notion of freedom of expression, so that we don't have one person actually dominating. I must run to another one. Individual introductions, people must introduce themselves. Team members were asked to introduce themselves before the opening topic and to state their interest and expectations. This approach helped the researcher to note the representativity. Now there you see those things, those aspects about representativity and diversity of constituencies. Then it tells you you are not going to get one view, and therefore your information is not going to be biased towards only one view. It was evident in the most teams that participants had already interacted with each other before with reference to tourism, community development work, and land care and resource management projects. This implied that participants could relate with one another and identify with the subject of tourism development. But how do you introduce the topic? It's also very, very important. How do you start the discussion? Then here it is said, in order to orient participants, reference was made to the introductory remarks presented during the process of gaining entry, because during gaining entry, we said we are coming to conduct research, and we even presented the research objectives. So when the research teams or the focus teams are there, then they are reminded, we are making follow-up to the gaining entry meeting, and this is now the time of collecting data for which the study is meant when we were given permission. Teams were encouraged to open and speak up and to show their interest in the research project, more so because the project was aimed at their development. Previous experiences where participants had been involved in tourism development project helped them to speak up. They presented plans on tourism village development and art production and efforts to acquire the existing ecotourism facilities. So this is their earlier experience, which they also brought to the fore when they see that the topic of investigation is also related to what they know. But there is the role of your role. The important role is to control the discussions as opposed to questionnaire-based interviews. This session focused on the level of moderator involvement and interaction in groups as principal aspect that shaped the research team discussions. Therefore, rather than simply asking questions, recording a single answer. Now you hear now, single answer which can lead to biasness, and moving on. The researcher encouraged respondents to talk. When somebody answers, then the others must also speak and engage with what has been said by the earlier speaker. They could ask questions and they could explain their answers, which was an approach that made these interviews longer. When you say something, then can you explain? When somebody has said something, can other people also talk to it? Is it the same view that you have? Then that in that way, you are actually managing to ensure there's no one view that is going on, or things that are presented are actually explained so that we have got that in-depth view of the phenomenon, the questions, response. But the groups should be controlled. An important requirement in group discussion, and one that the researcher facilitated, was to ensure that participants should speak at all times. On the other hand, it became evident that some research participants felt that the researcher had to provide information, as he was the one who had the best understanding of tourism development. Nonetheless, while fulfilling the role of facilitator, the researcher mainly stimulated discussions in order to generate information relevant to tourism. And here, you can see that some people were even asking the researcher, you know about this topic, why do you continue to ask us? This means that people were given ample opportunity to an extent that they felt, no, although we're given this opportunity, he knows the topic, let him be the one speaking. And it shows that the facilitator was not self-centered. He wanted the groups to be the one to present, to provide discussions, to responses. And here we talk about the moderator who is competent because of their background. I've already made mention to this, because some other people would even recommend that people should be employed and people should be trained to conduct these these discussions or focus groups on behalf of the researcher. But in small projects, there are no facilitators employed. There will be no need for training if the researcher is skilled himself. This is just what I commented. But there is also another element of the time frames. How long should these discussions take place? And I argue that there should be consideration of time. You cannot just have it the whole day, or you cannot just have it too many hours. Meetings that took place at the traditional leaders scrolls always lasted for about half a day. Transact walks required almost 3/4 of a day to a full day, depending on the tourism resources and attractions to be visited. And why I presented this slide is not exactly the same as focus groups, because focus groups, you are seated in one room, but here sometimes you are sitting, and this is an outdoor environment because it was for ecotourism. So the time takes long because sometimes you have to experience the natural environment, especially when you do transact walks. You walk, and therefore it takes longer than the normal and ordinary focus groups. These were in terms of research teams. And this is all that I wanted to share. But unfortunately, I could not go to how the authors talk, the theory that is behind it. But this actually responds to the theory, how we put the theory in practice. And I want to give us the last opportunity to make the last comments. How do you keep people for almost half a day for your research work? Do you inform them upfront, or what do you say to them? Remember, every day when we meet, we will always explain why we are meeting. When we are doing transact works, it is them that have identified points that must be revisited so that the researcher can experience and they can analyze and look at the status of the points that are to be visited. And we talk in upfront. And this is the place where I had to carry provision for these people. The one which I disclosed that some provision was carried so that when people are tired and they are hungry, we could sit down and have refreshments. We declare upfront that we will go there and there, but it is them that decided on points to be visited. If you want to make follow-up, you can make follow-up on that. Colleagues, if you don't have any more inputs, we are going to ask Cecily Ndela to close, and we will meet when we deal with participatory action research.